What have you gotten yourself into, little man?
In early May, I discovered a red-shouldered hawk family, which I observed fairly intently for about the following 2 months or so. I was at a municipal park, albeit in the more wild and wooded portion of the park, looking for spring migrant birds when I first saw this female red-shouldered hawk perched fairly close to a walking trail. I noted that she wasn't really afraid of me, and I had seen this before, especially at public places such as parks. While red-shouldered hawks out in the country where people are scarce might be quite skittish, the ones that hang around parks and other public places tend to be more tolerant of human activity. For the most part, I was still cautious, because even though birds along walking trails don't mind humans as much, it's only as long as humans keep moving. Often, when a person stops, the bird might become a little nervous and fly away. So I kept my distance. I came back the following day to do some more spring migrant birding, and there she was again, just a few trees away, perched on a branch about 15 feet above the ground. I started to wonder why she favored the area, so I did a little investigating, and about 35 to 40 feet up in a fairly tall sycamore tree, I spotted a nest. At first it appeared empty, but then these little nestlings popped their heads up, and what a thrill that was. They appeared to be about 2 or 3 weeks old, and one of them was a runt. I figured he was a male, as male raptors are smaller than females, but I also imagine he was born several days or more after his big sisters, maybe even a week. It's quite common for red-shouldered hawks to build their nests high up in tall trees, such as sycamores or oaks, and they typically place the nest in the crotch of the main trunk, but low in the canopy. They also typically nest in a tree that's near water, such as a creek, pond, or lake, and this sycamore was right on the bank of a creek. This scenario was everything you'd find on a checklist for a red-shouldered hawk nest. High up in a sycamore? Check. Tree right next to water? Check. Nest in the crotch of the main trunk? Check. Over the next few days, I watched how Mom and Dad took care of the nestlings. Typically, when a female is incubating eggs, and then for a period of time after the chicks arrive, Mom tends to the nest while Dad goes out hunting and brings back food for Mom and the babies once they hatch. I noticed when I started watching these particular birds, which like I said were already 2 or 3 weeks old, both Dad and Mom were hunting. However, while Dad would venture far from the nest to gather food, Mom always stayed within about 40 yards of home base. I imagine staying within that range allowed her to hunt, but also stay close enough to the nest to respond quickly in case there was an emergency. Here, she brings in one of the smaller meals she usually caught within her limited hunting range. I'm not certain, but it appeared to be a large worm. Note how a tug-of-war ensued between little brother and one of the sisters. The sister won out, almost certainly because she was older and stronger. And all while Mom was doing this, as the chicks were growing, they were constantly calling out, which I assumed they were telling Mom and Dad, "We're hungry, we're hungry." And during that time, while Mom was staying close to the nest, occasionally Dad would fly in with a meal, usually a mouse, vole, pocket gopher, frog, or small snake. And the way it worked was, when Dad came flying in, he would make some calls while flying, which were much different and higher pitched than the normal screaming calls during courtship, and would land on a branch nearby. Mom would then fly to meet Dad at the branch, get the food from Dad, then take it to the nest, while Dad would fly away and go off to hunt again while Mom distributed the food evenly amongst the babies, usually. Here, I couldn't film the interaction between Mom and Dad because I was filming the nest, but Mom and Dad had an exchange of food, and then Mom flies up to the nest to feed the babies. These are photos, but in this footage, you can hear the exchange, then see Mom fly up to the nest with food. Notice how she drops the snake in the nest, and another tug of war ensues between little brother and one of the sisters. The sister eventually won and swallowed the snake whole. I felt bad for little brother and noted he needed to fight harder to at least get a piece of the meal. Amazingly enough, only about 7 minutes after Dad left from bringing the snake, he came back with something quite a bit larger and passed it off to Mom. Mom took it up to the nest and gently fed it to each nestling, making sure to feed little brother first. I didn't see exactly what Dad had caught, but if you look closely, the flesh appears to be whitish and kind of translucent, which would indicate that it was probably a fish. And that seemed plausible, as red-shouldered hawks are known to occasionally catch fish. I've never seen how it's done, but I would imagine that they catch them in shallow water. And this was probably my favorite part of this whole thing, just watching Mom gently feed each nestling while the babies were just calmly waiting their turn. It certainly didn't remain that way as time marched on, however. For anyone who would like to watch it, I've included quite a bit of footage here of Mom feeding the babies in this gentle manner. But if you'd rather not watch all that, you can skip ahead about 8 or 9 minutes. You monster. In this footage, Mom brings in what appeared to be a vole that Dad caught. Little brother makes a power move and snatches the rodent from Mom, then tries to box out his sisters. Mom retrieves the prey, then one of the sisters snatches it. Mom grabs it again, but it gets picked off by each sibling several times before Mom gets total control again and feeds it to them. It didn't seem as if Mom was too upset by the shenanigans of the nestlings, so I think this was around the time when patience on the part of the babies was ending. It appeared Mom was allowing this scenario to be a learning experience, maybe the beginning stages of teaching them how to grab up prey and fend for themselves, but I'm not certain. Both male and female red-shouldered hawks build the nest, or refurbish a prior year's nest. The nests are made mostly of sticks and are about 2 feet in diameter and lined with bark, moss, lichens, and conifer sprigs. The parents continue to add fresh green leaves throughout the nesting season. Also, I noticed Mom continued to expand the nest as the chicks grew. As you can imagine, the nestlings were always disappointed when Mom brought in leaves rather than food. And as the days went on, I noted something that was quite interesting. Mom's hunting range expanded little by little. One day, in mid-May, when the nestlings were probably a month old, I arrived to something strange. The babies were calling almost constantly, and I couldn't find Mom anywhere. I checked all her usual perches, then all the trees in the surrounding area, but she was nowhere to be found. Eventually, after quite some time, I saw a parent fly up to the nest with food for the babies, and I assumed it was Mom. What a relief that was. This continued for a couple of hours, and I always assumed it was Mom. After thinking I hadn't seen Dad for all that time, I was worried something bad may have happened to him. However, it soon occurred to me that maybe I had been seeing him. To be honest, Mom and Dad look quite a bit alike, although there are subtle differences. Dad is smaller than Mom, which is the norm, as I mentioned previously, but unless they're right beside each other, it's hard to tell which one is which. I eventually figured it out that the singular hawk I kept seeing bringing the food was probably Mom and Dad, and that the days of Dad bringing the food in for a handoff to Mom were over. As the babies were growing and becoming more and more ravenous, both parents had to step up their feeding game and just bring the food directly to the nest as quickly as possible. And it stayed that way with Mom venturing farther and farther away to bring in more, perhaps larger food. Something else that was interesting to watch, it seemed that Mom and Dad were rather tired, and I would often see them perch, while on the way to the nest with food, and grab a bite to eat for themselves before taking the rest of the food to the babies. And who could blame them? I'm sure they had to keep up their energy for all the hunting to feed those young ones. I learned some other interesting things about red-shouldered hawks as well. For instance, I've always read that red-shouldered hawks eat small mammals, such as mice and voles, lizards, snakes, crayfish, and frogs. But while watching this family, I also learned that they occasionally captured earthworms, fish, and even turtles. Additionally, I learned the behavior of these birds, both good and bad, but it was mostly good. Number 1, I'd always read that raptor siblings can be cruel to each other, even killing one or knocking one out of the nest, but with these raptors, I never saw any abuse. Not even from the big sisters on little brother. I never saw them pick on him, not even once. However, even though they never hurt each other, I did notice that as they grew, they became more aggressive in their attempts to grab food, like voracious teenagers. In the beginning, when Mom would arrive with food, Although they were noisy and eager, they would wait for Mom to tear off a piece and transfer it from her bill to theirs. After they reached a certain age, probably about a month old, they began to fight for their food, but not in a way that they hurt each other, just in a way to make sure that they got their fair share or even more. When one of the parents would drop food at the nest, and that's mostly how it went, once they reached a certain age, they would all scramble to get a hold of whatever was dropped. It reminded me of that game of musical chairs where people lose their minds to sit in a chair when the music stops. In this case, the nestlings tried to box each other out and grab whatever was brought to the nest. As an example, here, after Dad brought a snake to Mom, after getting a bite for herself, brought the snake to the nest, dropped it, and got the heck out of the way. You can see here little brother was the first one to grab the snake and hold on to it, but he did not do a good enough job. You'll notice one of the sisters sneaks in and takes the snake away from little brother. Once the other sister saw this, she grabbed another end of the snake for herself and the tug of war was on. And here is something else interesting that occurred. I'd seen them scramble to grab food with their bills, but right here, one of the sisters uses her foot as leverage and pulls the snake from the other sister. I think that was a learning experience for how she could use her talons as well as her bill for food or whatever else. And perhaps it was also a learning experience for little brother, who was left hungry once again. A short time later, Dad came in with a small frog and gave it to the sister who lost the tug of war. If you'll notice, while this is going on, it appears little brother and the sister are preoccupied. I believe both are eating, so I imagine little brother was able to get at least a piece of that snake. And shortly after that, Dad came back with another snake, albeit a bit smaller. This time, little brother wasn't going to go hungry again, so he swiped the snake from Dad's talons with lightning speed, then protected himself using his wings, just like the sisters did. And while it appears the sisters tried for the snake, the effort was not all it could be, in my opinion, so I think they weren't as hungry at that moment. Also, notice here, which was May 29th, the sisters are as large or maybe even larger than Dad. I'm guessing they're about 6 weeks old here. The last day of May and into early June, I had a lot of family obligations, so I couldn't make it to see the hawks. However, I returned Wednesday, June 3rd to a rather surprising, but not entirely unexpected sight. The nest was empty. It had been around 45 to 48 days since they had hatched, in my estimation, which is about the normal fledgling period. I could hear little brother and at least one of the sisters calling, which was a good sign, so then all I had to do was track them down. I first found little brother in a pecan tree on a branch about 15 feet above the ground, looking at the creek. He would call out periodically, but he hadn't been as noisy as his sisters, which I also eventually located. One sister was in a tree about 15 yards from the nest, a tree where sometimes the adults would perch, and the other sister was nearby as well. Red-shouldered hawk parents continue to feed the fledglings for 2 to 2.5 months after they leave the nest. With an incubation time of 32 to 40 days, a nestling period of 42 to 49 days, and then 8 to 10 weeks more of additional feeding, red-shouldered hawks only raise one brood per year. It was good to see the sisters flying from tree to tree, practicing flight and exercising those wings. However, little brother, while mobile, was flying as little as possible, more like hopping from branch to branch with a little wing flapping here and there. At one point, it appeared the mother or father came up and landed a little higher up in the tree from little brother, but he did not fly to them, and I think one of the sisters did, and she got the food. Little brother tried to get up there, but he attempted to land on a vertical branch, and this was the result.
Oh, he's struggling to hang onto that branch. Do not land on the vertical branch, my friend. What have you gotten yourself into, little man?
While it seemed comical, I was worried that he was too far behind where he should be, that he was failing to thrive. After all, his sisters were skillfully flying from tree to tree while he was still hopping around from branch to branch. Over the next few days, I didn't visit the area as I was experiencing poor sleep and it was all I could do to stay awake each day. But on June 7th, I was out and about and decided to stop by. As soon as I exited my vehicle, I could hear at least one of the sisters. I really wanted this family to have a fairy tale ending, but in reality, there are no fairy tale endings, especially in nature. As beautiful as it is, nature is savage, and it truly is survival of the fittest. Of that there is no doubt. I didn't hear little brother calling, and I had a bad feeling. I searched around and eventually found his lifeless little body on the ground, not far from where I last saw him, June 3rd, and my fears were confirmed. There was a terrible storm the day before, but I suspect he died before then, based on the condition of his remains. I'll spare you the sad sight. I imagine he probably died June 4th or 5th, and there was no sign of predation. It appeared he just grew too weak and died. However, there had been rain on the night of the 4th and 5th, so I'm not sure if inclement weather contributed to his death. Whatever it was, I felt terrible for him. I had so much hope that he would be a Cinderella story. But even though little brother was gone, I certainly didn't give up on the sisters. I went searching for them and witnessed a fascinating scenario. I fumbled and bumbled to get my tripod and camera set up quickly, but I was not fast enough to get anything. But here's what happened. One of the sisters was in a tree overlooking an area of mowed grass when Mom came flying in with a fairly rotund pocket gopher. However, rather than just handing the prey to the sister, she eventually dropped it on the ground about 15 feet in front of the tree. The sister flew down to the ground and grabbed the dead rodent. Since I couldn't get the video camera set up, I tried to at least get a photo of the sister with the rodent, but she flew across the field and into another tree. Bummed as I was I didn't get any photos or video, I was happy to witness how the mother was teaching the sisters to fly down and grab food. I felt like that was a silver lining to the sad day, so I went ahead and packed up then and went home to work on other things. But I finally returned to the area nearly 2 weeks later, on June 26th. I kept busy filming and photographing a family of great crested flycatchers, and I wasn't exactly committed to finding the sisters, because I wondered if I shouldn't just leave well enough alone. But while filming the flycatchers, I heard one of the sisters off in the distance. She was definitely farther away than the previous June 13th visit. I eventually saw one of the sisters on the ground in a clearing, nearly 100 yards north of where I'd seen them in the previous encounter. I went ahead and approached to get film and photographs. Because these birds don't see me as much of a threat, they sort of don't pay any attention to me when I'm filming and photographing. Mom and Dad were the same way for the most part. However, I always keep a certain distance so as not to stress them. I continued and discovered that both sisters were hunting within fairly close proximity to each other. I was happy to see that they were still staying together, that family bond thing, and it's probably also a safety in numbers deal, but I know they will eventually go on with their own lives. They would call out occasionally as well, so I'm sure Mom and Dad are still bringing them food once in a while, but I imagine it's getting less and less every day. I took this picture of a juvenile red-shouldered hawk back on July 2nd, 2019, because the sisters were hunting in the same area and with the same mannerisms as this hawk. I can't help but wonder if they're related. It's not out of the realm of possibility, considering the oldest known red-shouldered hawk was about 26 years old. This one could be the sister's mom or dad when younger, or it might even be an older sibling from back in the day. As sad as I was about little brother's death, I was truly happy to see that the sisters are not only surviving, but thriving as well. If you're interested, I posted a video all about the red-shouldered hawk, and I'll include a link in the description. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video.